In part 3 of Open String Universe, we examined chord clusters that were rooted off the 5th string, and they involved the 1st and 2nd strings open, and sometimes the 3rd string. But what we're going to do now is continue along these lines, but we're going to advance the idea because you're going to add other bass notes. Let's start by taking a major triad in root position, rooted off the 5th string. So that gives you a C chord, C, E, G. And then you have the chart that shows you what your open strings would be as you move up the 5th string. So the 2nd string opens a B, that's a 7th. That makes it a C major 7. Then you have another E, doubling the 3rd. So you just have a C major 7. Now you probably know that chord. Let's finger it with the 3rd and 4th fingers. If we move the major triad up to a C sharp triad, but then we have the first 2 strings open, it yields a C sharp 7 sharp 9, because now the B is the flat 7 and the open E is a sharp 9. You probably know this chord by that fingering, but this is just right up root, root, 3rd, 5th, flat 7, sharp 9, just the way the theory formula applies. Okay, now I'm going to move a little quickly on this. And I'm not going to go in every fret. I did this in part 3 where I just played the chords that I felt were the strong chords. You should examine every fret. But here we have C major 7. Then the next one is C sharp 7 sharp 9. Move up to the next fret. What do we have? Well, you can see that now the B is the 6 and the first string open E is a 9. So we have a D6 9. We're going to skip the E flat because you got some tension tones. So when you go up here to an E, it's just an E chord. You're just doubling the 5th and the root. Move up one more fret, F major 7 sharp 11. Now you could call it an F major 7 flat 5, but you've got the natural 5 in there, so I'm going to call it a sharp 11. I know this issue of chord nomenclature is a bit confusing, but either way, you know that you're in the Lydian mode. And I'm going to talk about the scales here in a few minutes. We're going to go up one more fret, so now we have an F sharp root. What we get is an F sharp 7 add 4, because we have 1, 3, 5, the open B is the 4, and then the open E is the flat 7. One more fret, G6, 1, 3, 5, 3 and 6. Then skip the A flat, a lot of tension there. When you go up here, so you're rooting off the 12th fret of the 5th string, you get a really nice A add 9. You've got the root 3rd, 5th, as always. The 2nd string open is a B. That's now the 9, because A is our bass note. And then you're just doubling the 5th up there. We'll skip the B flat, and then we move up to B. Now that's a nice voicing, because a B add 4. 1, 3, 5. B is the 1, and there's your 4. So we have got a yield of 9 voicings that are usable just simply by taking that root position triad on the 5th, 4th, and 3rd strings and moving up and utilizing the first 2 strings open. Now I want to point out that we've been using both strings. And throughout the entire Open String Universe lesson series, I've talked about whatever available open strings you have, throwing them in there, and then we had a chord that was analyzed based on all of the available open strings. But remember that you don't have to use all of them. If we take the C sharp, for example, and you don't play the first string, you just have a C sharp 7. Okay, so keep that in mind, and that would involve some hybrid picking or finger picking or muting of a string if you're going to skip one. All right, now let's go through and examine the scales. Now I'm going to again do this rather quickly. I'm going to present a chart for this course. In the previous parts of Open String Universe, we took each chord and I labeled all the different scales and explained it. Well, if you've come this far, it's not going to be much of a problem for you just to go down the chart. So if you have a major 7 chord, you know you can do Ionian or Lydian. So the first one, both scales apply. If we took the C sharp 7 sharp 9, that's going to be half whole diminished. And then you can just look at your chart. When we go to the D6 9, you can use either Ionian, Lydian, or Mixolydian, because you've got the 3rd in there. Now there were some chords in part 3 of Open String Universe which were 6 9s without a 3rd. Remember, if the 3rd isn't present in the chord, that opens up the ambiguity of is it major or minor. You can go both ways. Now, this D6 9, you can do D Mixolydian because you don't have any sort of 7th in there. So Ionian, Lydian, Mixolydian, you can play overtone. A lot of scales. All you can do is look at your chart. The E, you have Ionian, Lydian, Mixolydian, overtone. lot of different scales you could use over this. Now anytime, let's go to the F. F major 7, sharp 11. Anytime you have a major family chord that has a sharp 11 or a flat 5, you're locked in to Lydian. So there's only one scale that's going to work on this one, F Lydian. Our next one was the F sharp 7, add 4. Well, because it's an F sharp 7, the only major scale mode would be Mixolydian that would fit over this. And indeed, with the 4th in there, that's a great choice, because we have the 3rd and the 4th in there. The G6, that thing's pretty open. Ionian, Lydian, Mixolydian, overtone, a lot of different scales. And then we have the A add 9. So I'm not going to go through all these because the chart's going to explain this. But what I want to get into now is this concept of analyzing this as a structure with some other bass note. Now this is huge. That's why I've titled it Open String Universe. We're just scratching the surface in these 4 volumes of open string chords. Let's take the C major 7 for example. Now when you hear it with a C bass, we've already done the analysis, everything's fine. I'm going to go up chromatically with a bass line. Now on a piano this would be very easy. On the guitar we run out of bass notes or fingers or both. All you're doing there is playing an inversion, so it's C major 7 with the 3rd and the bass. But if you put the F in the bass, you've got a really nice chord. You have to analyze it now against the F bass note, so it suddenly becomes, instead of a C major 7 with an F in the bass, that wouldn't be really the best way to describe this chord. You would say F is 1, C is 5, E is 7, G is 2 or 9, B is a sharp 11, E is a 7. So we have an F major 9 chord with a sharp 11. We don't have the 3rd in there, so you could say F major 9, sharp 11, no 3. But then I want to show you how this thing is like a vine that just continues to grow. When you come up with a voicing that involves these open strings, you might then say, well, am I locked into only being able to play it in that one position utilizing open strings? Let's refinger it. All I'm doing is moving up the neck with that same structure. I can get a little muddy down low because you got a root 5th 7th structure. But look what's just happened. We started off with a chord you probably knew, C major 7. Then we said let's change our bass note. That gives you a chord that's going to be Lydian because F major 9 sharp 11. And it'll always be Lydian, and then you've learned how to move it so you have it available in all keys. So that's the cool thing about this business of involving open strings in a chord. It'll cause you to find some new voicings that you probably wouldn't even have seen or been aware of. Okay, now look what we got out of that. This is huge. And anytime you play this chord, you'd have the Lydian mode right on top of it. Let's move up for some other bass notes. What happens if I take a C major 7 and I put an F sharp in the bass? Well, actually, you're making it a Lydian sound because the C major 7 could be Ionian or Lydian, but when you put that flat 5 in the bass, it's dark, but you're just in C Lydian. It's no different if I'd put it up on top. It just sounds murkier, that's all. What happens if we put a G in the bass? Well, you're still playing it as a C major 7 because it's in 2nd inversion. You've got the 5th in the bass. Now then when you start putting other bass notes in, oh, a lot of tension there. We don't need to even deal with that. What happens if I put an A in the bass? Now I've got a real nice A minor 9 chord, which could be written as C major 7 over A. And then we move up. B flat doesn't work too well. B is a big stretch. And you're going to get a cluttered sound because you got a minor 2nd interval down low. So that's not too practical. Then you start moving up and you say, well, what happens if I have a C major 7 and I put it over a D bass? Well, the problem is that we're in a real low register. So if we took this C major 7 up an octave, C sharp, too much tension. Well, that's a pretty good sound. That's actually the same thing that you play when you have a D13 sus4. So it's a good sound. Over the E flat, a lot of tension. So what we've done is we just moved up chromatically through the bass line. Now you might say, I don't know, that's a little bit technical. I don't know if I like some of the sounds. That's fine. I'm just presenting a concept to you, and I'm not going to do this with every single chord. I just want you to be aware of the principle that if you learn a chord and you get it under your fingers and you know it, then take that as a seed and see what else you can get from it. Because look what happened when we had that over the F bass. You had a really good voicing that you can edit down, by the way. You could play just fragments of it. Okay? So that's our first chord. Really quickly, here we had the C sharp, 7 sharp, 9. One really good application of this would be to put the flat 5 in the bass. Now I'm just going to apply some of these in a progression. This C sharp, 7 sharp, 9 is an altered 5. It wants to resolve to F sharp, and we're going to resolve it to a minor just for the sake of tonality. So you might hear this. And when you put that flat 5 in, you might want to clean up, not play the bass note that you had before. It goes to a major. So you could run it as a 5-1 going to a 1 major or a 1 minor. Let's look at this D6-9. Now this is a really nice chord, but I find that when you start adding other bass notes in this, you get some great sounds. One of my favorites would be if we put a G bass under this. Now I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to show you through a few, and hopefully it'll entice you to want to do it on your own. But if we put this D6-9 over a G bass, you get a nice sounding chord. Okay, what would it be? Well, now you have to analyze it against the G bass. So this becomes 1, 5, 7, 9, 3, 6. You get a real nice G major 13 chord. This also helps you see something. I teach formulas. I mean, you know, I didn't invent it. It's just real common. It's just right in the theory of music. But if we look at this, we say it's a D6-9 over a G bass. You can present yourself with a formula. You could say, all right, D is the 5 of G. So a D6-9 over a G bass is going to give me a G major 13 chord. So the formula would be a 1 major 13 equals a 5, 6, 9 over a 1 bass. Now I know this is getting kind of heady, but I just want to throw out some ideas on this part 4 of Open String Universe. Okay, so then what happens? Remember how it's a vine that can grow. If I were to take this structure and I say, wow, I really like the sound of this chord, I'm going to move it up. Look at what's happening. It never ends, it seems like, you know, because you can come up with one chord and it yields some more chords. So I encourage you to take the chords in this lesson, which were the major triad rooted on the 5th, 4th, and 3rd strings, root position, with the first 2 strings open. Learn them as presented, where you're moving up and you're analyzing them against the 5th string as your bass note. But then take any of them, once you get the sound, you like it, try playing other bass notes. And try playing along with your bass player or with a jam track, because you don't have to play the bass note by yourself. You could arpeggiate it. Let's say there's an E bass going. As guitar players, we love to hit an open string and let it drone. But we're limited, because we just have either an E or an A or a D as open bass notes. So try making a jam track where you have a pedal tone and move the chords around. But I encourage you to do the analysis, because if you just play something you like the sound, that's all fine and good. But how are you going to know what scales that chord will accept? How will you know what you're really playing if you don't take the time to analyze it? Besides, that's how you get to be like a machine and be able to see a note and know what number it is against any given bass note. Okay, so you see how big this is? Every one of the lessons in this part 4 of Open String Universe will be like this one. We're going to move quickly. I'll throw a few concepts out there, and I really encourage you to rewind the tape and listen to it a few times.